Hi there, David.
Hey, Nancy.
Hi.
Get my head.
So you, based on our conversation, I found us a wave.
Pardon me?
We were talking about electricity and the waves. That was
Oh.
your idea. So I got a wave.
Oh, awesome. Hey, John. How are you feeling? Are you feeling a little better?
A little bit. Still got a little bit there, but
Yeah.
I kind of took a little bit of rest today so I could get on here for a few minutes, and then I have to leave after I give Nancy a little introduction.
Okay.
My wife and I are celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary today.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Can't believe we've made it that long. I mean, not because of her, but
Time, because time goes by.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I just made you a co-host, Nancy.
Thank you.
And John, I'll make you co-host even though you won't be on for long. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
I'm taking Mieko to her. It's the oldest Japanese restaurant in Seattle. It's called Maneki, and it was actually there before before World War II, and then of course it was taken over, and the owners were interned because they were Japanese, and then they got it back after the war, and there's still a couple of ladies that are still cooking there at 80 years old, so it's kind of an interesting place.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's got some history to it, that's for sure. So
Should be good.
I love Japanese food.
yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good enough.
My Japanese friend, I asked him what's the secret to everybody living so long there, and what do they eat the most of, and that he says the secret is they eat a little bit of everything.
Right.
That could well be true. Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
The seaweed doesn't hurt.
No. But when you go for a Japanese brunch or even like breakfast, there's so many dishes. It's and it's not our typical breakfast here with cheese and eggs and sausages, right?
I remember you were saying one morning that you start your day off with some grilled fish and some, yeah. That's great. Yeah, me too.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I think I ate too many eggs and cheese and sausage when I was, growing up. So I didn't think it would bother me, but I think it affected my circulation, so I've been really conscious of that and, improving my circulation.
We had a farm for a while and raised beef cattle. So we, of course, worked hard as well as having a job in the city. But we would have, pork chops for breakfast and steaks for dinner. And it's just our normal, normal day.
If you're eating meat and, mainly meat and greens and things like that, and that's a really healthy diet, right?
Yeah, what's amazing is the amount we put down.
Right.
Yeah, no, it was good. And then when we moved to Washington, D.C., we quit eating meat really at all because it tastes so bad. We're used to our own.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing like just naturally grazing cattle, right?
Then
and
we
grass
picked meat
fed
up again along the way here and there, but it's well, when we were in Missouri, we could buy straight from a farmer, so that worked out well. We have not developed such a source here, I think.
Right.
Well, we're in a condo, so we don't have, we always have big freezers and things
Right.
to buy a side of beef and a side of pork.
My wife and I were often getting Kobe beef, but it's very expensive now. Unbelievable we get one Asian food market down the street, and it's amazing how much it's gone up. But Kobe beef's it's really good, especially if you're making, out making grilling a steak or something like that. It's really good. But everything's so expensive these days. Why?
Oh, here's Mary Durtain
Okay, I got her.
and Danielle.
Oh, nice. Hello, hello.
Hi, Mary. Hi, Danielle.
Mary.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, yeah, that's great. I will hope to hear from her next week.
Hey, Erica.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Fantastic. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hey, Erica.
Hi.
Do we wait a couple more minutes, David?
Yeah, we'll give it another minute or two.
Okay.
Yeah, the results are pretty much universal. And, each patch does something different, but the fastest acting ones are the pain patches, which they come in pairs, of course. Yeah, you learned that. But they all do amazing things for essentially everybody. There could be some odd body type somewhere that maybe didn't get the results they were hoping, but some people think they're going to get a miracle.
Some people do.
Hello.
Hi, Tess.
Hey there.
How are you?
Good.
Just gonna wait a few more seconds. Okay, John, let's take it away.
Okay. All right. Thanks, David. Hi, this is John Bishop. I'm here with my good friend, David Jumper, and today's guest speaker, Nancy Flournoy. I should say Dr. Nancy Flournoy, who we've known each other for, I think now about 10 years, right, Nancy?
Getting close.
Getting close. Yeah. So anyway, a wonderful friendship we've developed, and she's quite a wonderful presenter and has quite a lot of knowledge to share today. And I just want to, without further ado, introduce her to you, and Nancy, you can take it away.
Thank you, John. I have to open this up a little to get my share screen button. So you see the.
Yep, we can see that.
Okay, so yes, I'll just say a word about myself to start. My background is clinical trial, experimental design for clinical trials. I have worked in the medical field for since the 70s. I have particularly been interested in developing the methods by which experiments are run. So that's the technical side of my background. I have an ongoing research career, and I continue to publish papers, even though I'm emerita, which means I still have a position with the University of Missouri, where I was chair of the statistics department, but I no longer have to go in and work. A, they don't pay me, and B, I don't have to go in and work. So my current position, I can call up the tech people and get advice on how to use my computer and fix things that are broken, and I can get access through the library to different things, but I don't need to physically be there, and I don't need to teach classes. So I have moved to Bellingham, Washington, which is delightful. And the connection with this world, I had my energy crisis, near-death experiences around 1997, 1998, which was the result of a traumatic injury to my head. And I, in terms, I didn't expect to live to be 50, and I recovered from that by falling into, fortunately, a lot of energy, alternative medicine, and various modalities of energy work. So the IceWave patches, we actually used IceWave on my husband. It was his issue here that got us into the patches, introduced by John Bishop, whom you just met. And I have to agree with, on a lot, of course, with David Smith, who said that you can do what the patches do through intention and meditation and having your brain in the right ways and using it the right ways. I mean, I know that from personal experience, but I also know from having the patches that it would have been a whole lot easier if I had had the patches, and that these are just little miracles waiting to be used by people. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to talk about the IceWave patch. What I've been doing is doing each of the different patches, and so IceWave's turn has come up, and I'm delighted to be here on X39 Zoom. It's a treat to be here. So, IceWave. Most of you have used the patches and you know IceWave, and if you don't, you should get to know IceWave, because as it says on their label, it is a safe and natural way to get pain relief. And what we want to do in this talk is to understand a little bit more about what that means. And so we'll look at things from a couple of different directions. I mean, first, what is pain? And then how much, and then what, so we'll look at what is pain, and then we'll look at a particular quote from David Schmidt that intrigued me, and the rest of the talk really follows from that statement to see how see what we can learn about IceWave. And I look at this as an adventure. You know, so kind of when David stops talking, that's when I start scribbling and going to the internet and trying to look. But it's been, 30, 40 years since I was in school, and a lot of the things that are relevant to this line of work have been developed in that amount of time. So to a large extent, what I report on is just the results of my having done an investigation and then, trying to put it together in a way that's comprehensible. So what is pain? It's defined by the International Association for the Study of Pain as an unpleasant sensory or emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage. And so pain is actually a tool in our body that is designed to prevent additional, well, either something if it's a threat, but to prevent tissue damage and protect the body while it's healing. And I think David has said this many times, it's when the pain becomes chronic that it is going to become pathological and dysfunctional. So that's the formal definition. And what I found is that we have 4 different mechanisms here for pain. The top 3 are from Western medicine, and then we have the Chinese view. And so the top 2 have to do with pain that's actually to the nerves and or the nervous system. And the third one, this nociceptive pain, is pain that is the result of noxious chemicals, inflammation, something mechanical happened to you, like I got hit in the head by a diving board, or you have some obstruction that is causing a deficiency in your blood supply. Now, in looking at these top three, we're going to focus on the third one because in my personal experience with the IceWave patch, it's the third one where it really seems to have its to be really good. And in fact, so I have a little bit of experience with the pain involved with the nervous system. In one case, I have a cousin who is 30 years post a stroke and couldn't move her foot in that 30 years until I put a couple of IceWave patches on her, which is what I happen to have at the moment, and she was able to flex her foot. So that was positive, and you might think that has to do with the central nervous system. But I have a couple of other cases where the person really did have a damage, had injury to the nerve itself. In one case, I have another cousin who had a heart attack, and they went into the heart through basically this very tender acupuncture site and went in to do whatever they were going to do surgically, and they damaged the nerve endings here. And when he tried the IceWave patch, putting it right on that spot, he found it very, very irritating and got a lot, but did find benefit from the carnosine, which makes sense. So I don't know, I'd be delighted to know if anyone has testimonies from people who've had lesions to their actual nerves and the IceWave has helped. But in the meantime, for the purposes of this talk, we'll focus on pain caused by these other sources, which I think is not inconsistent with the Chinese view that pain is going to result from stagnated or stuck energy, and that it occurs in an area where energy flow is diminished. So those, I think, actually complement each other. Now, so we're looking at this so we were looking at nociceptive pain, and so there are these things called nociceptors, and they're actually at the ends of nerves, in not just on your here's a picture, not just on the end of your fingers, but also on organs and other tissues. So at the end of a nerve, there are these little receptors that are going to get signaled when you have had one of these particular types of insults. And I got a couple of definitions. So these are on the ends of neurons down here, neurons at the ends of your fingers. So let's see what the various definitions for those are. So a sensory neuron that responds to a damaged or potentially damaged stimuli by sending possible threat signals to the spinal cord in the brain. Now that's right in line with what David has been telling us, that it's not that you have pain and the pain message goes to the brain. It's that you have a threat and the notice of the threat goes to the brain. And then the brain tells you that you hurt down there. And it tells you that you hurt wherever it was, in this case, the thumb, in order to protect you from hurting yourself more or doing something stupid. And over here we have a sensory receptor is one that responds to pain. So that's a little bit the other way around. And it sends signals that cause the perception of pain. So they're a little not quite clear, I would say. So no receptive pain. You've got a threat, and you see this little green line here. So there's this receptor on the end of, say, your thumb that gets smashed maybe in a door, and it sends a signal into the spinal cord, and it goes up the spinal cord into the brain, and then they've got it mapped, you know, pretty well as to exactly where the signal is going to go.
Very hectic, busy day for me today.
And there are two kinds. It gets divided into two kinds, somatic and visceral. And the somatic is like you slammed your thumb in a door. You know, the pain is right where you heard it. And the visceral is where the pain you feel is very far from the source. So both of those are included. Now, to come back to the patches, this was the statement that I picked up from David Smith. He said in a recent talk that the IceWave patch aims to flood the area of the pain with electrons. And I had, I thought that was an interesting way to phrase what he thought was happening. And so we're going to explore that a bit, just to, for anyone who is new to the patches, I'll just say that they're designed to influence specific photoreceptors in the body, and that they phototonically reflect specific frequencies of cells, frequencies that match the cells that are being targeted to increase. So this kind of description of what the patches do in general comes from Thomas and Helen Brzezinski, who did some of the, studied a number of the patches. Also, I'll say there's a nice summary on how the patches work in general in a paper by Piven et al. In 2013. And these papers are all available on the Lifewave website in the science section. So we're going to think about what it means for electrons to flood the pain area. And so this is busy. But let's look up here on the right. This is a hydrogen atom. So a hydrogen atom has one proton, and you can see the little plus sign. It's the nucleus. It's sitting there all by itself. And one electron with the negative sign, it's got a negative charge, and that spins around in all different directions, but there's only one. So the electron, when the electron is usually paired up with this positive charge, this nucleus in a hydrogen atom. And it's kind of, you know, one of the things that was kind of, you know, I tried to do when I made this talk is you talk about electrons and you talk about ions and you talk about hydrogen, and you could almost think of, you know, sort of, I'm trying not to think of them all as the same thing. So the electron is just the negative charge in the hydrogen atom. Now we have two different ways we might think about how the electrons are working with pain. And actually, I think they're both true. It's just that I hadn't thought about the second one before. So the first one is the electrons can generate electricity. And I've already said this. So it's with, I've got a train in the background here. We have Burlington Northern trying to send all the coal from Montana as fast as it can to China, and it goes by my, between me and the water. So I apologize for that. But it's when this electron is lost from the hydrogen atom that you start your electrical current. Okay, so electrons can generate electricity. The other way, the other path we can go down is just to say, okay, let's look at hydrogen all by itself. and think about what it's doing in terms of what it's doing. It's probably never totally disconnected from electricity, but thinking about what it's doing sort of separately, at least in our minds. So here we have two hydrogen atoms. So we have the plus, the nucleus with the plus, and they each have an electron. And so you see if these two hydrogen atoms are close to each other, then the electron from one is attracted to the nucleus of the other and vice versa. And so these these hydrogen atoms want to clump together. These molecules are always seeking to be neutral in terms of their electricity. And then we hear the word oxidation a lot. And so oxidation is when you gain an oxygen or you lose a hydrogen. And the hydrogen is positive, the oxygen is negative. So either way, you're creating a negative charge. So,
Excuse me, Dr. Flournoy.
yes.
Are you able to enlarge the slides? Like, can you change that to a slideshow?
Oh, yes.
Please?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, how's that?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I just have to get all your pictures out of my way. Okay. So now we have, let's talk about electricity first, and then we'll talk about the hydrogen atoms. So in the old model, we have this phrase, electricity is a form of electricity. Electricity is a form of energy that occurs when electrons flow. And so we have this little picture. We've got three atoms, and you see the little red star here. You have the electron moving from one to the other and then moving to the other. And you get this idea that the electron's traveling down this path. Now, what we learned in a video that David showed on one of the morning sessions not too long ago is that the electrons really don't flow, that the way the current goes is much more like the ocean wave, where the water just goes up and down, and yet there's, quote, a current running through, which is really then the force that's going to knock you over if that wave crashes on you. But that, except at the beach where it runs up on the sand, the water's really not moving much. I'm going to also give you a couple of definitions on this slide. That is conductivity, which is a measure of how the electrical current moves in a substance. And then in particular in liquids, we have water's ability to allow electrical flow. And I mentioned water in particular because our bodies are 45 to 75% water. And so when we are measuring how electricity flows by the different instruments that are used, for most of them, for a lot, we're measuring how they move in water. So another very nice video that David showed us recently, David Jumper that is this YouTube video called A Big Misconception About Electricity. And it ties in because I couldn't find this person's name. He's clearly a professor somewhere, but he set up this little mental experiment where he had this battery, and you can see across the ways the light bulb. And then he had the wires going out in both directions. And so that they're supposedly connected, but they were going out to I believe Saturn and coming back again, a long, long way. And he had this quiz about how long is it going to take if he flips the switch, how long is it going to take before the light bulb turns on? And then he gave his talk, which I recommend to everyone just to think about this new model of electricity. The answer is that when he flips that switch, that light turns on at the speed of light, not down the wire over to Saturn and back again, but straight across from the battery to the light, where there are no wires. And so when we start thinking about electricity, we have to think about it as something much more than electrons running down a wire. And in particular, that little observation drew me to look back at what John Maxwell did a long time ago. And he discovered the connection between the electrical field and the magnetic field. And so if the electrical field is going up and down, or if this is a linear path it's on and it's going up and down, it's in one plane, the magnetic field is perpendicular, and whenever electricity flows, there is a magnetic field. And so, we're starting to think much more about, our bioenergy and our electrical fields that we're walking into. And I think the new thing to try and be aware of is that that there really is this space around that electrical wire where a lot is happening, and the wire itself is not wired like a nerve or whatever in our body, is only a small piece of what's going on. So trying to tie things back to light a little bit, we have so Maxwell really defined the electromagnetic field, and he did a lot of other amazing things. I found this quote from Albert Einstein, the one that's on the page here, where he says, Maxwell was when one scientific epoch ended and another began. So he's looking at that as a real change point. But he also said, somebody asked him if he stood on the shoulders of Newton, Isaac Newton. And he said, no, I stand on the shoulders of John Maxwell. So I don't think this has been appreciated because we haven't really appreciated electromagnetic energy and what's going on. So we have in physics, the word light doesn't just refer to or may be used for more than just visual light. When it can be used to refer to all electromagnetic radiation, and I've listed the 7 different kinds of electromagnetic radiation there. So it includes radio waves and microwaves and gamma waves, etc. So we can think of it all as light, it's just different frequencies. And then we have these other sources of energy, electrical energy, chemical energy, and thermal energy. And this picture I found has these sources of energy creating light, because somebody always wants to turn on the light bulb. But in our case, in the case of the patches, where the light is created, and these arrows can go the other direction, they just need the little bump or a push or whatever. So these energies are all interchangeable. Now, when it comes to current passing between cells, which if in fact the the IceWave patch is going to do exactly that. You've got your negative patch, your positive patch, and you're going to create a current. Or you're looking at one of these pieces of equipment that's trying to measure how much conductivity you have in your cells, then you have something going on like this in these cells. So on the left, we have cells with normal oxygen levels. And you can see if the voltage is really high, you've got the red line, it goes right through the cells. And if the voltage is low, then it passes around the cells. And this is important for the newer instruments that have been and are still being developed to measure the kind of activity that we're talking about with the patches, because what a number of the scientific works look at is what is the ability of the electricity to go through the interstitial space that is around the cell, because that needs to be good, or else you can't get food or materials, or you can't get things to the cells, in the cells, and out of the cells if it can't get around the cells. And then back to the issues with oxygen, you see on the right side that if you don't have enough oxygen, then these cells melt their fatter. The space between the cells is reduced. And so high frequencies are still sort of going through the cells as they did before, but the low frequency energy is, you see how light this green line is compared to the ones over here? It's having a hard time getting through there. So when we don't have enough oxygen in our system, we're not going to do a very good job of conducting electricity. I see there's some chat. If anyone sees anything they think I should respond to right away, please interrupt me. Otherwise, I'll wait. So the next two slides really reflect the recent talk that David gave. He made 2 points I just elaborate on a little. One is electricity now is being used to treat pain. And the other is that we can measure it. But if we just think of how electricity is now being used to treat pain, well, I found a review article that's just full of things, but it's mainly electrical stimulation with lots of gadgets like this one down here. You have electrodes all over you, and you have some equipment, and you're going to get stimulated. But there's also discussed many studies where the light and the electrical stimulation, the whatever it is they're using, whatever wavelength, they are connecting it to different actually molecules and other drugs. So they're using it to carry things into the body. Now, of course, I didn't see anything like Lifewave, which is just going to use the light directly into your body and carry information and make your body do something that is good. Virtually everything in there, was trying to use it to give drugs, and that was kind of depressing. Now, the other comment he made is that the information can be measured, and if you've had a great experience, you've got your pains gone, you don't really care whether anybody can measure it or not. But if you're a company like Lifewave and you, Lifewave, of course, the testimonies speak for themselves, and people who have experienced the relief and the healing power of the Lifewave patches aren't going to be slowed down a minute by whether or not there is, quote, scientific evidence of it. But it's important for the company to be able to measure things so that that because there's a world out there, and one would like to mainstream things eventually. So we want to be able to measure things. And these are just some pieces of equipment on the right. And they measure the electricity going through different biological tissues. This acuscope, which is virtually all of these are used in the Lifewave, one or more of the Lifewave studies. The electroacuscope has been used to measure the conductance along the meridians. The biopulsar is actually designed for low frequency current, which is we just talked about on 2 slides ago. You know, it's going to tell you how the energy is moving in the interstitial spaces around the cells. And this electrointerstitial scan is also used a lot, and we may talk about that later. I think, I'm not sure I heard correctly, maybe David knows. I think it's the biopulsar that David Schmidt said he just purchased. It was a new piece of equipment, and I think that's it. But I'm sure we'll see more of it if it is. Okay, so that's that part of the talk about electricity. So now let's just talk about having a pool of hydrogen, which has been about, you know, has an electron on each molecule. So first, what about hydrogen by itself? Well, your whole body, 99% of your whole body consists of just 6 chemical elements. So hydrogen is one of them. Next to or just down from oxygen and carbon, and just above nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus. So we have a lot of hydrogen in our body. We need a lot of hydrogen in our body for it to work right. And the last percentage point is made up of almost completely by these other chemicals. And so when we talk about like the copper for the copper peptide, you can see that you don't need a lot of it. It's not even on the list. And there are other metals and things that you really do need. They're essential, but you need small pieces of them compared to the rest of it. So hydrogen is in part of almost every molecule, including DNA, proteins, sugars, and fats. Now here's a little picture I showed you before about how these hydrogen atoms are attracted to each other. And we're going to look a little more about what they might be doing if they were all pooled up together. So certainly if you had 2 together, we saw they're attracted to each other. Now, if you throw in some oxygen, I thought this was a cute picture. So oxygen, water is 2 hydrogens and an oxygen. And these little deltas show whether you've got a positive charge or a negative charge. So here you have a water molecule with 2 hydrogens. Here you have another water molecule. You have a 3rd water molecule, but there's a 4th one in this picture. And you see it by this hydrogen going to the oxygen and back up this other way around. So this oxygen in the middle is holding another 2 water molecules together in a lattice. And the first point is that the hydrogens sharing molecules is really critical to making everything work in our body. Things don't work the way they're supposed to if you don't have these hydrogens around. And then this, I really like this picture. This is collagen. Well, it's the hydration of collagen. So the colored strings of atoms down the left and the right on both sides are the collagen, collagen by itself. And the white connectors here, what they call bridges, these are water. It's just like this picture I showed you above, but it's holding the two collagen strings together. And so when we talk about getting hydrated, we're talking largely about making these bridges between our collagen atoms, collagen strings of molecules. So anyway, these, but we need hydrogen, that's the point. So you don't find much about hydrogen itself. I mean, try and look about hydrogen itself in pain and you just don't go anywhere, but there's quite a bit about molecular hydrogen. So molecular hydrogen are these two hydrogens that are together, H2. And it in this form is actually a gas, and it's often written H-H, and here's a little picture where you have your one hydrogen nucleus on one side and one on the other, and you can see that the electrons just clump together because those two negatives want to cancel each other out. So, so there have been over 170 different studies in animals and humans about the therapeutic effects of breathing hydrogen therapy. So this is like you're going to inhale it, it's a gas. And I don't know, maybe it could be pumped into you somewhere, but it's not a little patch. But they say, okay, so how does it help? And the key is that it's going to reduce your oxidative stress and your inflammation. And these, of course, are the root of lots of diseases. So we hear a lot from David Schmidt about inflammation and oxidative stress. And we now know that oxygen can help, or not oxygen, hydrogen can help with it. So I just have a couple of slides to sort of paint a picture of how that might be true. So if we look on the right, just as oxidative stress in the big picture, we have you have antioxidants and you have free radicals, and it's like a teeter-totter. You don't want to have too many free radicals. You need them for some biological functioning. But if you have too many, then your tissue starts to get damaged and you end up with inflammation and tissue injury. And this happens because you have these electrons, the free radical. Okay, here's a picture here. What is a free radical? Well, you got a electron that isn't paired up. So it's like taking the cable off your battery in the car so that you only have one connected and you've got the other loose, and then you go for a drive or you start waving it around and slapping things. So you've got this, you've really got a live wire that's just running through your system wherever it is and wherever it can go, causing havoc and stealing electrons off of other cells because it wants to be paired. And so in this picture has it, it's an antioxidant. This particular molecule like glutathione is designed to give away negative charges, electrons, to pair things up and make them not reactive. But that could be any other cell that the free radical is just able to steal an electron from. And from what we were just talking about, we have this hydrogen. It's got one electron, and it spends most of its time in the body. If you look at the pictures of the reactions that are going on, either giving an electron or taking an electron, that seems to be its major job. So that's oxidative stress. And obviously the electrons, a pool of electrons can do a lot of good. So I thought I missed one here. Maybe it's later. Okay, yeah, we'll get, oxidative stress, and then the other way in which the gas is known to help is inflammatory response. So we also hear often from David that the immediate inflammatory response is good, and then it turns chronic, it's bad. So I have a couple of slides on that. Here is the good inflammatory response. Your blood vessels get bigger. You start sending more blood. The immune system cells in the blood vessels start attaching to the cell wall, the wall of the blood vessel, and they squeeze themselves through. And then if you look at this bottom picture, you have the little blood vessels coming up on the top, and you see these helper cells coming out and heading up to where there is a wound. And then another thing that happens with inflammation is if you actually have damage that goes, through a lot of tissue into, it's getting close to, say, a blood vessel, you get a clot, and that is part of your inflammatory response. So it's protective. The chemicals that are released are things like histamine, which a lot of people take, ATP, which is your energy packets, and then this is only a partial list, but one called nitric oxide, and I listed it because it is a free radical. So it may be useful in the short term, but it's certainly not in the long term. So nitric oxide causes your platelets to aggregate. It causes your vasodilation. It causes your blood, your veins to get bigger. And there are a number of other things that it does that are very helpful. It's up here. It's 2 nitrogens and an oxygen. So what it actually is a messenger, and it regulates the growth and death of many immune and inflammatory cells. And so all of that's good. But if you get chronic inflammation, then that is happening when the acute injury is not resolved. And in addition to the fact that your tissue remains in a state of destruction, and you may or may not have an infection, whatever was the insult, the body then starts to repair itself by making scar tissue and forming new vessels. And the whole process of the inflammatory response creates a lot of toxic byproducts. So now you've got to deal with a lot of additional toxicity, and it can eventually become an autoimmune disease. So when all of that starts happening, you end up with essentially an inflammatory soup. And this is where the pain comes in. It produces a painful area. And one thought is that the painful area is actually, we talked about these neuroreceptors on the ends of nerves, and that something has to get to those to go to the brain to tell you that you have a pain. And so the thought is that it's activity in the soup that's doing that. That's starting to send that signal to the brain. And then the whole thing spreads because the surrounding tissue gets involved and you hurt more. Okay, so that was thinking about hydrogen sort of all by itself. And now I want to tie it back to water. We all think of hydration, we think of water, and water by itself is great because it is like a lubricant and it clears out accumulated toxins. But from what I read, which is interesting, that when you're actually really, really thirsty and you want water, it's really the hydrogen that you are most in need of, and that is the underlying cause of dehydration. So, needless to say, dehydration is not good. A lot of symptoms in aging are related to dehydration. And the positive thing is if you have hydrogen and you connect it with oxygen, we showed those pictures, you can create electricity, you can create heat, and you are going to replenish yourself and be healthier if you get your hydrogen. Back to pain, if your body's dehydrated, you're going to have more pain. You're going to have more inflammation, more pain. So it amplifies the pain and reduces the blood flow response so that you're not getting the positive cells in there that you need to fix things. So not only do you feel worse, the body's natural response to eliminate the pain is slowed down. So we need to get our water. Now, just one slide. I don't have a lot to say about this, but it's one thing that David keeps mentioning when he talks about light. And so I thought I'd just give it a shot to kind of wrap this piece up. That is cytochrome C oxidase. Okay, I've heard him mention this on numerous occasions now. I'm going to run out of time here. Maybe you think I've run out of time already. So let's look at this just briefly. I'll just point to you. This is the mitochondria down here, and you're outside the mitochondria up here, and you've got this membrane. And if you look along it, you've got a lot of hydrogens on both sides of these interactions. Hydrogen, hydrogen, hydrogen. You got a hydrogen here, and you end up with 2 on the other side. If you go through this reaction, you've got 2 here, you end up with 4. You've got this enzyme that David keeps mentioning is this purple squiggly thing. And its main job is to take oxygen and hydrogen and make water. And with that, you start with 2 hydrogens and you end up with 2 hydrogens on the other side. So I think we'll learn more about that as we maybe hear something more from David or we learn more. So now I am not going to say a lot about the patches themselves. There's the clock method by which you put a tan patch on the place that hurts and you move the white patch around until you get relief. And I have seen numerous people have miraculous reliefs, and you probably have too. I think I need to wrap this up and not talk about the crystal's electrical properties, which we could. So let me just run through in about 30 seconds or so the studies that have been done, because IceWave was one of the early patches, and therefore there's really more work that's been done on it than on any of the patches since in terms of studies. That being said, I'll just say, so a number of them do thermal imaging, and we have clinical studies, a double-blind placebo-controlled study. We have this thing called NM4 gauge, which measures the tension in the muscles. We have a lot of different studies, and as you can imagine, they pretty much all show that IceWave does what is reported to be done. And I think before and after pictures, you have all the red, which is hot, and after you've patched, it looks better. The horse pictures you've all seen, and maybe you've all seen that you're all hot, you're better afterwards. And I am going to just fast forward down to the end. And see if there's any questions. Of course, Lifewave does not cure anything. We're just helping you. The patches are just designed to help you help yourself. So, oh, click on slideshow. Oh, okay. Well, I didn't mean to do that. I'll just stop share. How's that? Anybody left?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. So, I mean, I should have gotten the slides fixed sooner. You've all, those of you who hung out, I'm glad. Thank you. My talk's not for everybody.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all that very detailed information.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Y'all have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Have a
It
great-
was very informative.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks. Right.
Everybody have a wonderful July 4th weekend. And we're going to be here, by the way, for Q&A and the discussions tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time at x39zoom.com as well. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.